thank you for being consistent and continuing to support this movement and our group. So before we get started, we're going to start off with a short presentation from Instructor William, by which he always gives us the framework and the foundation for how we should apply all of the information and all of the principles that we are learning through the Nunetics methodology, specifically through the Fitra. How can we engage the Fitra? So we'll start with that. And then we'll have him pass the talking stick over to Master Instructor Karima Bilal, and she is going to do a presentation for us on, give me a second, I want to read it because I think I got a note on it. Sugar, the mischief in the created thing. So I'm really excited to hear about that. Just a quick aside, sugar is consonantally connected to shukran. So as we know, in Fitra nature, nature is neutral. So something only becomes either good or bad if we either look at it through that lens, or evil or beneficial if we look at it through that lens, or if we take something and then make it not good. So we'll see what this presentation is about. I got an idea, and this one is going to count for every single one of us because we know how much sugar affects our health. But there's also good sugar, the one that comes from the Fitra. And that's the sugar that we need to make sure that we are taking in. So I'm excited to hear how that it will apply. And then Miss Karima Medina Bilal will pass the talking stick over to Instructor Bilal, and he will be presenting on Al-Baqarah. Now, how now brown cow? Question mark. How now brown cow? So I'm excited to hear about that because if I'm correct, that's a homophone. All of these words rhyme, but they have different starting letters. So I'm not sure where we're going to go with that, but I'm excited to hear that. So without any further ado, I will pass the talking stick over to Instructor William to start us off.
Okay. Greetings, everyone. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. We'll start with Surah Al-Ham, and then we'll go to our usual of giving gratitude, focusing on gratitude. So, A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين صدق الله العظيم. It's a beautiful day, and I pray that you're enjoying the moment, because there's always now. I mean, everything is now. When we got here, and we asked yesterday, so we're in the now. So I'm sending you that energy, that be in the now, and fully embrace it. You know, uh, I want to start with this. Imam Muhammad gave us some valuable hints and clues that if we're tapping into those now, our life is transformative. We're going from stage to stage, and that's the process in the fitra. We live in a dynamic universe that's constantly evolving, and it's constantly in the process of change. So we want to embrace the moment, but in that spirit that Imam directed us to, he told us to engage the creation, you know. And he also told us to question everything that we've been taught. Two valuable pieces of wisdom: to engage the creation and also to question everything we've been taught. So we'll start with that. Uh, I've shared with you a couple of times in the past that I have been uh, given the responsibility to serve as an elder uh, in a capacity of like a coach or an advisor uh, or just someone to share experience and information that others can bounce their lens off of or through. So it's been a very rewarding experience. I'm working with the core group that I'm working with here in the Atlanta area are young men. There's some young women as well involved, and they're in their 30s, 40s, most of them. And they in turn are taking that information and that experience and sharing it with their networks, with their circles, and with a primary focus on the younger group of people coming behind them that is often referred to as being in their teens. So it's an experience, well, for me that puts life in perspective, because it's all about sharing. So I was asked to do a regular session with the group. So what we did, we decided upon starting with a 7-part series that's focusing on the 7 laws of universal order. And that inspiration came from several different places. Uh, I've often uh, alluded to the idea and the fact that, as Allah directs us in the Quran, that we're always being guided. Allah is always guiding us. Often we're not aware of that. We're not acknowledging it. We're not incorporating it into our consciousness. But Allah is always guiding us. And you put a pin in that, that we're constantly being guided. And if we will uh, allow that guidance to take form and to take shape and become activated in our everyday experience, again, we will become a part of this transformative experience called life, this vibrant, uh, universal movement, again, that's called life, and we'll be in a constant state of change and evolution. Meaning what? Meaning that we are constantly expanding and growing. So in these 7 laws of order, uh, I took an inspiration, if you will, from the work of Napoleon Hill, for one. And he came up in my feed. Again, Allah's always guiding us. We might think it's a coincidence or an accident. No, there's no such thing in this life experience. Allah is always guiding us. We just have to pay more attention to the guidance. I mean, always. And it'll come in some very, uh, from apparently some very mundane ways sometimes. Sometimes in some, what we might consider something being very uh, majestic and uh, coming to us on a very high plane. Nevertheless, there's guidance in everything. There's guidance in everything that happens to us and for us. So, in these 7 laws of universal order, to use some of the descriptions, it was uh, for one, it stimulated the imagination, and it took us along a definite path. So that's why I borrowed from Napoleon, just for the description, not for the content itself, just for the label of these 7 laws. And I'll share those with you. The first one that we've already entertained with this particular group of young people was called definite purpose. Uh, the second one is the law of organized planning. And the one we just completed in the last strong 7 was controlled attention. And that's when I'm going to share some thoughts and insights with you on today. The next one would be something that international instructor Benjamin Bilal made reference to just a few moments ago. But that's daily discipline, having a routine in your life. That's the fourth installment, and that'll come this coming Wednesday. And I'll make note in the chat after I complete my presentation, and so that if you have time during the noon hour from 12 to about 1:30, you can tune in and enjoy the conversation on daily discipline. Again, establishing routine according to the fitra in your life. Okay. The next session after that, the fifth one, will be on emotional command. And National Instructor also alluded to that in a conversation that he was having with Imran about our importance of emotions in our life and putting them in balance and in proper order. The sixth installment will be on circulation and service. And rounding it all out, in the seventh strong seven, it will be continuous growth and reflection. So that'll kind of round things up. Now, in order to tie it into our class experience, as instructor Nawar was just indicating how she's working in her business environment and working as a coach, uh, what what uh, what I've done is to uh, share of course, the materials, the books that International Instructor has written, and especially the one on lunetics. I've shared that with the group, and I've made them aware of the basic uh, words that we use in our linguistic journey and lunetics, and they're picking it up and they're using it in their own conversations among themselves, as well as in the class environment that we have. So this particular one that we just completed this last Wednesday, this last strong seven, was on controlled attention. So let me just share some thoughts with you. I had actually prepared a very complete uh, presentation, lecture, a professor to student kind of a presentation. There was so much in the whole concept of controlled attention. I had to get into to physics and to the quantum physics. I had to get into the Quran to establish it in the Fitra, and I went from science to what people call spirituality. I had to go to history, and it got bigger and bigger and bigger. And then anchored in my own personal experiences for the last 78 years. And the subject matter of controlled attention got so big, and I had so much material until I raised the question, and this is a process I use. I raised the question, and that how can I possibly deliver the essence of this material so that the members in that class, those young people, could utilize it, could actually get benefit from it. Because a lot direct us uh, to deal with knowledge, to handle knowledge, but not any knowledge. Allah directs us to useful knowledge. And he lets us know in the Quran that we actually have access. Allah, the source creator, has given us access to the utility of everything in the heavens and the earth. So useful knowledge, having utility of it is extremely important. So I raised that question. How can I deliver the essence of this material where uh, I don't overwhelm them where and my mind immediately went to the 60s uh, during the civil rights movement when in order to control the crowds, the police would use water hoses, not water, just fire hoses, and they would attach them to the hydrants, uh, and people just could not deal with that kind of force and pressure, and they would get overcome. They would be overwhelmed. And so I kind of thought that if I shared all that information on controlled attention, it would have that kind of effect. So what I did, again, I raised that question, which again is the process, and how you can engage, consciously engage uh, the guidance that Allah has for us, available to us and for us at any given moment in our life. It's there. We just have to look for it. And so I raised the question, how could this be delivered? And the answer was, I'll read this to you now, was in the context of a poem. Uh, and I'll read it to you. Alignment with the fitra. And as an introduction, before I actually got involved in the recitation of the poem itself, I read the statement, learn how to allow the fitra to guide us. And remember, these young people are using that language. Most people who identify themselves as Muslims uh, that were in association with Imam W.D. Muhammad, that are reminding themselves and other people about the language of Imam W.D. Muhammad, but they are not and have not, to my knowledge, paid any attention to what Allah points us to in the Quran. That not only is our life is defined what they call religion, not only the Deen al-Islam, but it's also Deen al-Fitra. But there has been no conversation by Muslims about the Fitra to any extent at all. But these young people are eager to learn, and they're using that language in their environment. So I was comfortable with introducing this poem with that statement that they should learn how to allow the fitra to guide us. Alignment with the fitra. Learn to let go. Then you know when to say no. In the now, the angels will bow toward you. Source creator saying, kun fayakun. Be and it becomes one. It could be said, one equal one, or one plus one plus one plus one equal one. There's so much, and these what amounted to 12 stanzas of this poem. Very simple, very direct, but loaded with uh, this idea of alignment with the fitra. In this life experience, we are directed by Source Creator to appreciate it as creators. Allah says He's the best of creators, which suggests that we also have the ability to create. And that's fundamental for us. And Allah says that uh, everything is created in pairs. The sciences calls those pairs duality. And we see that in the beginning of human life. when the sperm and the spermatozoid is called scientifically, is directing its energy, searching for its target, which is the female ovum. When that unit of life engages that other unit of life, the two become one. Then the life form that we call human life, it takes on its beginning as one. And in the growth process, Allah invites us uh, to study the plants. You know, if we want to know about human growth, to study the plants. And in that command, if you're listening, in that command is the command to look at the growth, the evolutionary process, the process of change, going from seed, and of course, nunetics is all about the seed, but not just the seed in and of itself, by itself, for itself, but the seed in terms of uh, what it is, but through processes that Allah has designed and coded into the seed for its expression, its growth, the changes that it goes through continuously when placed in the right environment. And the human life is like that. So what happens when that first unit of life, it splits and becomes two. So the one becomes two, but they don't stay separated. So the two rejoin, and so the one becomes two when it splits, but then it rejoins. And so it goes right back to one. Then those which were two split again, and those two become four, and then they rejoin. And the four becomes eight, and they rejoin. And the eight becomes 16, and they rejoin. So it's a constant return to oneness, to unity, to they would use the word wholeness. I don't like that one. To completion, to totality, to fullness. All those concepts. So there's a constant return, a constant returning to Allah, to a constant returning to our origin, constant returning to a process and a state of being one, of being complete. And that's what we see when after 9 months or so of gestation, the new life is delivered as one complete being. And we never leave the oneness of life. So one plus one plus one plus one plus one, you could keep doing that a million, a billion, a trillion, a quadrillion, quintillion, you could on and on times, but it all amounts to one. So the division is not for the purposes of going against the nature that anything was created in. The division is for the purposes of being able to appreciate unity and oneness. So what are we talking about? We're talking about controlled attention. Controlled attention. The physicists say whatever you give your attention to expands. They also say that the nature of life can be described as a wave. Think of the waves in the water, the waves in the ocean, even the waves in how we perceive air in waves. The scientists also describe uh, the brain activity in waves. They call them wavelengths. They also describe the energy coming from the sun in terms of waves. They call it electro magnetic. Uh, they call that a very dynamic process of and the way you can measure the energy and the changes in it. Remember, life was not designed, is not designed. It's just a dynamic creation. Life was not designed to be static or to stay what appears to be the same. Life was designed to be in constant change. We're told that the only thing that for us that's constant is change. So life is constantly evolving, it's constantly growing. It's constantly expanding. So the universe itself is always expanding. So this idea of controlled attention is so important in terms of how we live our daily life. If you're the same today that you were yesterday, then you aren't in this process that we call life. You are considering the fact that we've been advised by international instructor on many occasions that nature is neutral. So you're either going forward or you're going what appears to be backward towards life or towards what we call death. But nothing remains the same. No thing remains the same. But when you give your attention to anything in life, you are actually doing what Imam Muhammad suggested some time ago. You are actually engaging the creation, and when you engage the creation, then you are actually become one with that part of the created order. When you connect with it, then it gives rise to it taking the what's called the state, the particle state, going from the wave state to the particle state of this part of creation. And so now you can utilize your five senses to feel it, to taste it, to see it, to hear it. So all of those five senses you're able to utilize them and experience it in what's called uh, 3D, a three-dimensional. Now it was interesting. I had a call just last night. Show you how Allah guides us. I had a call from a very dear friend. We haven't spoken in some time, but he called me. He felt a need to call, so he called. He reached out to me last night. He, and he lives in a city, uh, and I won't indicate which one because some of you in our class may know him. And I don't want to bring that into the picture, but anyway, he lives in a area that I spent some time in my life, and uh, he's always been like an independent thinker, and he called and he had a lot on his mind, and so we and he's one of those people who love to think outside of the box, and he's a free thinker. And so he had a lot to think of, to discuss in terms of this whole idea uh, of operating within the fitra. And so we had a good conversation. And he was being critical of a lot of the people in the city that he's in that are not entertaining the direction that life is moving in, that human life is moving in, to really engage the fitra now. And so he was talking for a long time. He was talking very fundamentally as a matter of fact, he started off the conversation. He asked me how I was doing and whether I was operating in 3D. Now, 3D, for those of you who may not be really aware of what that means, he was asking was I operating in the third dimension? And so I laughed and said, well, most of the time. I said, but I'm kind of moving in between 3D, 4D, and 5D. I'm kind of moving in between all of those. And so we laughed, talked about that for a minute. But he started again, Allah guides us in everything. Now he ended up the conversation. Uh, so he left the 3D, which I was all about because Allah tells us to engage what? Useful information. He gives us utility of the heavens and the earth. So I'm all ears when it comes to talking about knowledge or information that we can use. But he ended the conversation saying, we had talked for some time. He put his wife on the phone because I know the whole family. And so we went back and forth, back and forth. But he ended the conversation. He said, we'll have to talk another time about reincarnation. And so, and so we went all the way from something that was basic and fundamental and useful to something that we know absolutely nothing about. That's whether we're able to uh, leave this carbon 12 suit, going through this thing that people call death, end of life, and then come back later and get another chance and this was his words pretty much, to correct what we got wrong in the first life experience. And I just got quiet. I didn't engage that because he went from things that were useful and beneficial and something that I could benefit from, he could benefit from, his family could benefit from it. And that's what I shared with him. I said, listen, Allah directs us to something very useful when he tells us to save yourself and your family from the fire. I said, now that's something we can dig into. But reincarnation, I mean, we can talk about it, it may be interesting. It may be, maybe even be beneficial, but why waste that time? So why am I saying that? Because if you put your attention on things that you don't have any means uh, of dealing with, your primary command from the source creator is to get control of your life and your family's life by giving controlled attention to that thing so that it comes out of the wave state and comes to the particle state as you experience this three-dimensional experience called a human life in this 12 carbon 12 suit called your human body, floating in outer space, and talking about something that you have no real knowledge of and you have no ability to gain knowledge of through space. So I came on that trip, into space, where you might get suspended and not be able to find your way back. And Allah tells us that and gives us the command again in the Quran that we're off returning to what? To oneness, but turning to it in a way where it also warns us not to have this focus or this controlled attention that's not checked with knowledge. You know, so as we check it with the fitra, that's where the knowledge is. Allah directs us there, and 30th 30 verse 30 in the Quran directs us to the fitra as our source and our reference point and the thing that will allow us to get into this state of controlled attention. Okay, so let me kind of wind down. We have so much uh, in store for us today. Now, what I've done in these conversations with these young people, they are entertaining and engaging and excited about receiving what I'm sharing with them, and I'm sharing these concepts with them through the seven beginning ayats of the Quran, as and the form that we read it in, and and in the chapter of the surah has been uh, labeled as Al-Fatiha. We in our Nunetics environment understand that a better description would be Surah Al-Ham, given that one of the most important uh, things that gets our attention in that at the very beginning of that surah and the second ayat is Alhamdulillah. The word so that idea of hamd of of of, of gratitude is right there in the beginnings uh, of those oft repeated concepts, ideas, commands from the source creator. So what I've done, I've used those seven ayat to teach these principles that we call the seven laws of universal law. Yes, we're using the Quran, and many of those young people uh, don't know anything firsthand about the book itself. Some of them do, but most of them didn't. But they are excited to gain that kind of perception of these concepts directly from the Quran. So, for this particular idea of controlled attention, it would be which is the third installment. It would be Ar-Rahman, Ar-Rahim. Now, we don't have time in this presentation to go into depth, but for those of you who are members of this class, I would just invite you to give that some serious thought. How do these two concepts, using Nunetics, looking at uh, Rahim, looking at Rahman, looking at the consonants and those words, coming from Rahm, the womb, looking at those consonants and using the direction directly from your Nunetics book. Just I'm I want you to raise the question: how does that help us to see ourselves in the role of this very important universal law and concept of being able to direct, control your life, to create in your life? That's what I mean by control your life. To create in your life the kind of life you want for yourself and your family. How does Ar-Rahman, Ar-Rahim put you on the path to having controlled attention? When you have controlled attention, it means what? You are bringing it into your uh, conscious power, I'll call it, bringing it into the prefrontal lobes and into the part of the brain that's called the neocortex, where you have the ability to create and to make sense of things, and to use your rational abilities. And that's how you are able to examine things and to be able to direct your attention. That's where it happens, right here in this part. So how does the idea of Rahman and our Rahim assist you and take it and implement it? And the third level of the energies in our seven basic energies energies that are called the chakras. That would be the third one. That's the solar plexus. So how does it give enlightenment and light to that direction and give you the power to overcome what you might allow yourself to drift into uh, ego or arrogance that are one of the things that could happen on that third level, energetic level? Or how can you get the benefit out of your growth and expansion on that third level of your own growth, engaging this idea of Ar-Rahman, Ar-Rahim, the Rahm, going from one stage to the next, from one environment of study and application and expansion in your life to the next for yourself and for your family. That's what saves you from the fire. Fire has harm in it, but it also has a lot of good. A lot, it has more good in it that we would call good than what we would call harm. There's one idea that I wanted to share with you that was an insight that revealed itself as I was considering these thoughts about this particular aspect of life of a universal law of controlled attention. When there's this idea that we've heard many times in the streets that everything is everything. Well, and considering the totality of those seven levels, those seven stages of growth that we can see uh, direction from those seven ayat and Surah Al-Ham directs us to this idea of fullness, of completion, of totality, of being one, of unity, of Tawheed, of that concept of everything working together, that of everything being everything. I said, what if we considered uh, this idea that the scientists are taking us to now? They're telling us in order to get into the area of the ether, where all possibility, they call it uh, uh, the quantum field, the ether. And they said that's where all possibility and all potential exists. The thing that the mathematicians would call infinity. But it's no beginning, no ending to possibility and potential. And so the scientists say that that's available to us at any given moment. That we have to allow our energies to be elevated, to rise to uh, to the frequency that's in the quantum field, or that's in that energetic field that's called the ether, in order for us to bring ourselves to that point. In our own life experience, we have to elevate our energies to that using the right thought, asking the right question, as Imam Muhammad told us to do. And when you ask the right question, you will receive, Allah is obligated to answer. It's like a dua, to answer that prayer and to give you the answer to the question, the right question I'm saying, because that's the thing that is moving in your uh, in your very being, and you're allowing it to be expressed. That's the right question. And when you ask that, you don't resist it, but you put that question out. You magnetize as a part of a universal law by using that controlled attention. You magnetize the answer to that appropriate question, and that will allow for you to have be on the path of fitter growth in your life. There's so much to say, but we'll just end it there. and I'll take the talking stick and pass it on. I'm anxious to see about this sugar too. I had a question. I don't know if our master instructress, Sister Karima Medina Bilal will engage this, but I had a question just early today. I always try to this said Allah tells us to uh, save yourself and your family from the fire, but one thing is taking care of yourself nutritionally. So early in the day, got up early, and instead of eating a heavy meal, uh, I ate some dates. But I don't know if I ate too many or not. I don't know. I felt kind of little sensation in my brain. So I said, oh well, maybe I had a few too many. So I wondered, is this natural sugar that you can get from dates? I'm just throwing a question out. If she has time, she can deal with it. But this natural sugar from a fruit like a date can affect you that quickly like that. Anyway, with that, I'll take this talking stick and pass it on to someone that is, is not only capable, but she has done the thing. It's talking about controlled attention. She's given the kind of controlled attention in her life to something that she's been interested in that evolved her to a point that she's in a position that till I think I made a comment. I think it was in our last class that she should have a medical institution under her control and direction. That's where her controlled attention should be, in my humble estimation.
Oh,
She has.
goodness gracious. Goodness gracious. Well, thank you so much for that vote of confidence. What I will say is that not, I would much prefer, because I have something of a control issue, to teach online, or better said, to provide instruction online. That way I don't have to butt heads with the establishment in the same way that I would if I were teaching formally. So
Yes.
I believe that as the Gil Scott Heron said, the revolution will not be televised. So the way that it's done, and
Yeah.
I take my cues from the FITRA, which you so elegantly referenced, and that is the ants and the termites. You don't see them unless you disturb them. But termites I'll use the termite analogy, are very busy 24/7, and can bring down the biggest institution because it attacks it at the foundation. And I think that what you're doing and what Instructor Bilal and all of us in this class are doing is working to build a foundation or to establish upon a foundation, all al-fitra, the lifestyle, the way of being, the way of living that was designed for us by the Creator. And that transcends age, it transcends gender, it transcends emotion for sure, emotional status, and financial status. It's the foundation upon which we were created. Now, to very quickly, while it's in consciousness, answer your question about dates. Sugar is sugar, and it will have the same effect in your body, regardless of the source. In some cases, you could say that nutritionally, in terms of vitamins and minerals and fiber, it's better for you. But even the best of Allah's creations in excess, or an excess being here defined as that which your fitra has outlined, will give you adverse reactions or adverse effects. So it's not that it's not organic. It's not that it's not good. It's not that it does not have a place in our nutrition. However, we are our own science lab. Huh? So what may work for one person may not work for you. I'm a clear witness to this. Look at how many people, how many established institutions tell you that you should eat fish and it should be wild caught and it should be prepared this way, that way. Very good for one, provides all those things you've heard me speak of before, EFAs and DHAs and all these other kinds of essential fatty acids, but it will kill me dead if I'm in the room.
Mm.
If I'm even someplace where it's being prepared. It does not have to be that I ingest it by mouth. It's just that I am just that sensitive and just that allergic to it that it will cause me severe problems should I ingest it. So I would say the best way, now I'm going to reference the home health clinic, right? The best way for us to determine what is good for us first, how much of it is beneficial and how much is harmful are two ways. Number one, your body told you clearly, whatever it is whatever amount it was that you took, it didn't make me feel good, so don't eat that much next time. And the second thing, I recommend as strongly as anyone can recommend a product. Get yourself, all of us, and get for your family two things. Number one, a continuous glucose monitor. It's called a CGM, right? And it's made for Apple phones, it's made for Android phones. And what it does is it's a little sensor, a little fine mosquito type needle that goes into the fat of your arm. And what it will do is you link it to your smartphone and it will tell you the effect of what you eat on your blood sugar. Now, I said you get a second piece of equipment, which is a flat out blood glucometer, which is the thing that you stick your finger with and measure your blood. Now, the reason that I say that is that you need to know how closely the CGM, the continuous glucose monitor, actually reflects your blood sugar. Because one measures serum, right? It measures what's in your tissues. The other, the finger stick, measures what's actually in your blood. I have found that there's a very close correlation in my personal experience, and I've used it for sometimes months at a time. I go off it periodically, but when I've used it, it's within 10 points. For me, it's 10 points higher. You may find that it's 10.5 points, whatever, but you won't know that until you do it, right? And the finger stick one is very inexpensive. It's you can get the whole kit, which is the lancet that you stick your finger with, the monitor itself, the alcohol wipes, and the little strips that you have to feed into the glucometer. You can get that whole thing for $25 to $30. And anyone who's got a waist, if you're a female, that is greater than 35 inches, or if you're a male, your waist is greater than 40, that's part of the equipment you must have in your home health clinic. So that's what I suggest to you about that. And there's a reason that the traditions in Middle Eastern countries and in the Muslim paradigm in general, that after Ramadan, after one has been fasting, that we break the fast with dates because it will quickly raise blood sugar. Now, I'm guilty of it. I can eat 10, 12 of them at a time because I love the medjool dates. I love the texture. I love the whole experience of eating them. And I particularly love eating them with nuts. I just do. But I have found, using the CGM, the continuous glucose monitoring, that more than, depending on how long I've been fasting, 2 to 3 will spike blood sugar to levels that are undesirable. Despite that it helps with the iron and it helps with the minerals and the potassium and all that, but the actual glucose levels, undesirable. So that's probably more than you asked, but that's an important point to make. Everybody should have certain equipment in your home health clinic. You should have it. And one of those things needs to be a glucose monitor, the finger stick one. And if you have been diagnosed with diabetes, or you have you're developing insulin resistance, which is what the quick, easy way of knowing that you're developing insulin resistance is turn sideways, and if your belly protrudes, you got it. Now, how bad is it? That you measure with labs. So I hope that is of some value to you. And
Extreme value. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
praise is due. The praise, I just work for Allah. Allah, all the thanks goes to Allah. I just work for him. So I'd like to, if I may, share my screen with you. And today's presentation is on it's called The Mischief of Created Things. I was looking for a presentation that I made called Food Fitra Falak. I did it probably in 2019, 2022, something like that. And it was online for a minute and it disappeared. So I had to recreate it. I pray to Allah that I have included the same things that I did then. But the short sentence is, this is called The Mischief of Created Things. Now, I am one who, like most of you, I look at the Quran from a very practical standpoint. The idea that you have this wonderful book and it should be relegated simply as a story or a book of history that has no practical relevance in today's day and time, in my estimation, is a great loss, because it's supposed to be a book for all time, for all peoples. And I ascribe to that. I ascribe to that. It governs my life. So as a person who studies health and medicine and a student of people, a student of people, I look at the Quran as a source of practical guidance. And I look to bring the lessons in the Quran out of the book and into my life. Out of the book and into my life. So I'm given to interpreting health concerns through the filter of the Quran. So today I am exploring the relationship between Surat al-Falaq and sugar and fitra, the food industry, and health. Those are the three things that I wish to explore. And of course, being a student of Nunetics, and Instructor Bilal, if I misrepresent what the connection I'm trying to make, please jump in and correct me, because I want to make sure I'm doing this right. Living with Instructor Bilal has taught me I'm triggered every time I hear a word or a phrase, and being a person who studies language, I am triggered every time I read the Quran or a particular slogan or something strikes me. I look to see how it's in the Quran, number one, and then what guidance can Nunetics give me to help me better understand what the Quran is saying. And mind you, I do not speak Arabic. My native language is English, and neither do I know how to read or write Arabic. My brain thinks in English. However, with Nunetics, I have been able to break certain things down. So this is just exploration. Instructor Bilal, jump in. Don't let me drown. I feel like the rest of you students, because I am a student. So the surah in reference here is Falaq. And the first ayat, if I might recite it, is Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. قُلْ أَعُوذُ بِرَبِّ الْفَلَقِ مِنْ شَرِّ مَا خَلَقَ وَمِنْ شَرِّ غَاسِقٍ إِذَا وَقَبَ وَمِنْ شَرِّ النَّفَّثَاتِ فِي الْعُقَدِ وَمِنْ شَرِّ حَاسِدٍ إِذَا حَسَدَ. And that word khalaq caught my attention and triggered me. So I asked Instructor Bilal to help me with this. Now, the connection that I wanted to make was first, is there even a connection between khalaq and sugar? So we break it down, as we've all been instructed to do, by looking at the consonants. So we have S, G, and R in English, and I know that in the Arabic it's kha. Now I'm banking on this, being that kha and ta are from the same point in the mouth, that they're both gutturals. So Instructor Bilal, let me know if that's not the case. So I looked at, please do, please do. I'm displaying my innocence here.
You're good to go so far. Keep going.
Yes. Okay, so we have the letter K, which, as we know, can be interchanged with the letter S, as in circus, right? The C has the S sound, and the second C has the K sound. So I think we're on solid ground with the letter K, presuming that the letter K and Kha are from the same point in the mouth, and therefore from the same group, the same vowel family, and they can be interchanged as well. And then we have R, right? So L and R are interchangeable. And it's very interesting that our grandson, who is mastering his language skills, frequently not confuses, because I think he's getting the idea of it, but he says R when he means L, and also W. So he won't say look, he'll say wook or rook. Gigi, wook here. It's whittle. I think it's the cutest thing. He'll get it straight. And then we have the cough, which is also guttural from the back of the throat. So I should have made this a Q here, but in any event, they're from the same part of the mouth. So from that, I'm making a link between khalaq in the surah and the word sugar. And that leads me to exploring the relationship in a different way. So here's the English of the Arabic that I just read. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Say, Qul, I seek refuge with the Lord of the dawn. That makes my skin tingle. The Lord of the dawn. This is the Yusuf Ali translation. And dawn is translated as falaq. And I've heard that word falaq used not just as dawn, but also a cleaving, a separation, a sharp demarcation between darkness and light. That's what the dawn is it not? It is the cleaving, the separation, the point at which darkness becomes light. And I extrapolated from that good and evil, and knowledge and ignorance. So I seek refuge with the Lord of the dawn, that being Allah, to protect me from ignorance, from remaining in the darkness of ignorance, and allowing me to make the separation between the three of them. From the mischief of created things means shar il khalaq. Now, shar is another sugar word. Shar is not quite evil, although I've heard that as one translation. Yusuf Ali translates it as mischief. Now, think of these different substances which find their way into our diet, into our feed, that are not flat out deliberately poisonous. Well, they are, but that won't kill you instantly, and that are presented in a playful, joyful way, as mischief is. This is what children do when they get into things they should not get into. They're not evil, but they are playing with things that they should not. In this case, playing with people's bodies, playing with people's nutrition, and manipulating the fitra. Let there be no, I want to say manipulation, but alteration in the fitra. And one of those things, the created things, the khalaqs, the created things are certainly all the various iterations of food, which is not fitra food, but things which started out that way and have been manipulated, the worst of which is the genetic manipulation of food, so that on the outside, it looks like what we've been conditioned to recognize as food, but chemically, it is something quite different. And one of those is high fructose corn syrup. I think it was in the 70s. I believe it was a Japanese scientist that first created high fructose corn syrup, which then was jumped on by all the big food people as a substitute for sugar, because it was certainly cheaper. But in the body, it causes great mischief. Now, some people will say corn syrup, that occurs in nature, but the constitution, the way it's made, the way nature constitutes corn syrup is different than the manipulation that's done that makes it high fructose corn syrup. Now, what's the difference and why should you care? Unlike the other sugars, fructose can only be broken down by the liver. And when it does that, it taxes the liver. I'm condensing biochemistry. And excessive fructose, as in this case, high fructose, that's what this word means, high fructose corn syrup, it taxes the liver, and in the body's attempt to maintain its fitra, homeostasis, it begins converting that glucose quickly into fat. And this is what gives people fatty liver. That's different than fructose that's in fruit, regular fruit. And people will say, well, fruit contains fructose. How come one is good and the other one is not? Well, when you eat fruit, and I'm speaking of fruit in its natural form, off the tree, out of the ground, it contains water and fiber, both of which change how it's absorbed, how quickly it's absorbed into the body. And it's not concentrated the way high fructose corn syrup is, and it's not synthesized. The act of the synthesis, the act of conversion from just plain corn syrup into high fructose corn syrup changes how the body uses it. Now, I'll give you references as we proceed as to more explanation of that, if for those who require the biochemistry of it, but let it be enough to say that high fructose corn syrup has done more than a little, has done a tremendous amount, a tremendous job in increasing the rates of obesity, metabolic dysfunction, and diabetes. The mission of creating the food pyramid. The food pyramid was created by the big food industry to tell you how much of the different nutrients, macronutrients, proteins, fats, and carbs you should eat. And right at the time, if you could see a graph, you would see that concurrent with the acceptance by the food industry of high fructose corn syrup now became the big promotion, right? Which was kind of begun, in my opinion, when Eisenhower had his heart attack, President Dwight Eisenhower, in the late 50s, I believe, early 50s, had his heart attack. His personal physician, Ansel Keys, made the determination that his heart attack was caused by high cholesterol. It's since been proven to be not the most accurate assumption or conclusion he could have come to, but the result of that was that it was popularized, and those people who monitor these things to see where there's economic opportunity for profit, and to jump on it and be the first to bring it to market, jumped in and said, well, if the president had his heart attack based upon high cholesterol, therefore cholesterol is bad and fat is cholesterol, and therefore you must decrease your cholesterol. And then people began to migrate away from butter and tallow, which had been used since people made food. Certainly throughout Europe, certainly throughout any farm communities, any people that eat meat, understand you get tallow. That's the oil you get from rendering the fat. People didn't waste animal food, didn't waste meat food. They would take the fat and render it and use it for a lot of things. That's called tallow. When meat, the fat from meat is rendered, whether usually it's associated with beef or venison or even pork, God help us, but that animal fat, let's just leave it at animal fat. People have been eating it for decades and did not have the side effects, the spike in heart attack, diabetes, cardiovascular events that we have since the food pyramid came on the set and told people that they should eat low fat. And since low fat food doesn't taste good, now we began to get the introduction of high sugar. And they told us that you needed to eat 6 to 12 servings of carbohydrate every day without emphasizing whole grains. So you began to get food products that were made from highly refined flours with high fructose corn syrup for taste. And you can see, if you choose to look, you will see the graphs. Diabetes, cardiovascular events, all of them trended upwards and sharply. The mischief of created things, the food pyramid. Told you eat very little fat without telling you that your brain runs on fat. Not Dunkin'. Your brain runs on fat. You must have cholesterol in order to make cell membranes, in order to make your hormones. You must have it. They didn't tell us that. And of advertising. There's a book that Imam Muhammad recommended to the community called Subliminal Seduction. I think the guy's name was Brian somebody. Ben can tell us. But long story short, advertising became the means by which people ignored common sense, ignored proven traditions that had caused people longevity for decades, and adopted These things, the advertising slogans that we still remember that are 20, 30, 40, 50 years old. You deserve a break today at have it your way, right? It goes on and on and on, right? So these are things, and advertising, let us not deceive ourselves. Advertising is very, very, very powerful mind control. When they have 15 seconds to quite literally inject an idea into your subconscious that will prompt you to make changes in your life, to spend money, to cause you to accept ideas about health, which your common sense and your better judgment would tell you to reject. In advertising, tells you to accept. A classic example of that, you see it every time you look at a sitcom and they interject commercials. They tell you, you need this and this and this drug. And my personal favorite was the one for weight loss, which caused your body to reject fat. And so do this, you will lose weight, you're going to get better, your life is going to be better. And then the person at the end of it says at twice normal speed that if you do this, the side effect will be loose, uncontrollable, oily stools. I love that one. Oh, the other ones will tell you, you take this, but if you get suicidal thoughts, contact your doctor. Good luck. In the middle of the night, person decides, I want to take my life. So I'm going to call my doctor. Good luck trying to get him. Good luck trying to get anybody on call at that time, unless you've got certain crisis numbers, of course. But why should you even have to do that? Oh, taking this, well, you take this, it will help you with your psoriasis or will help you with this other thing. However, it's going to nuke your immune system and it may cause a fatal, you actually hear them mention, it may cause effects to one or another of your organs, which can be fatal. But that is not emphasized as much as the pictures, which are running concurrently, of people having a great life, having overcome whatever the initial ailment was. Imagine you're taking a drug for mental health that may have the side effect of causing you to commit suicide. Explain the logic. Advertising. From the mischief of darkness as it overspreads. Now, when I read this and I was studying metabolic dysfunction, or as we would say, prediabetes, I began to link that to Allah is always merciful to his creation. Allah is the most merciful, the most compassionate. So it didn't seem logical to me that a disease as devastating in its impact as diabetes would manifest without some warning from Allah. And indeed, that warning for those who have the eye and who have the spirit to listen is something that once you see it, you can't unsee it. One of those signs is called acanthosis nigricans. Acanthosis nigricans. And I'm going to show you a picture of it. It's this darkness that overspreads. You'll see it on the back of the neck. You'll see it under the arms. And when it really becomes pronounced, you'll see it on the face. And it's at a point, once you see this, and it happens to people who are heavily melanated and lightly melanated. But it's very easy to see in melanated people. And when you combine that with what we call central obesity, that is to say, big belly, right? These are definite signs of insulin resistance. the darkness that overspread, very, very visible under the arms for those of us who choose to look. But what makes me really angry is the deliberate misinformation. So there are people who will see this and say, you need a scrub, a sugar scrub, a brown sugar scrub. You need a concealer. You need a makeup. You need makeup. Huh? Instead of, why is my body doing this? What is my body trying to tell me? And when it really gets bad, you'll see it around the eyes. And it gets to a point as the insulin resistance gets worse and worse, that the person's whole face gets like that. And the person gets a couple of shades darker. And people start scrubbing and they think, oh, if it's around the neck, well, this must be some cheap jewelry. But I know I bought this and they told me it was high carat gold. This is deliberate misinformation. And now, interestingly, when a person goes to the doctor, they don't even ask you to take your clothes off anymore. Many don't. So you don't do the inspections. Very interesting. They'd send you to a dermatologist here. And what should happen is that your dermatologist, instead of just prescribing a cream for skin lightening, a proper dermatologist will look at this and see the hirsutism here. If you're paying attention, when women get long sideburns and begin to develop a mustache, and these women are not of postmenopausal age, this is hormonal imbalance. And insulin is a hormone, just like testosterone is a hormone, which causes hirsutism, just like estrogen is a hormone. So we have to pay attention. And who sees your body under your arms on a regular basis? You do. We do. Who looks in the mirror how many times a day? You do. I do. We do. But do you even know what you're looking at? This is where ignorance is perhaps the worst darkness. Remember, the cleaving between darkness and light is also the cleaving between ignorance and enlightenment. From the mischief of those who practice secret arts. Now, you may not think that big agri and big pharma, I hope you know politicians practice secret arts all the time. Every time they meet in Congress, they meet in secret. You're not, unless there's a lot of stuff you're not privy to in the chambers of Congress and the Senate. If you choose to look, you could probably get the minutes or the transcript, but the average person is not privy to the decisions that govern our lives. So you can bet your bottom dollar the mischief of those who practice the secret arts. Do you know? It's just astonishing. Do you know that the people who make products actually have food labs in which they invite participants to consume the products, not just to rate them, are they good or they're not, but to find what they call the bliss point. What is the bliss point? It's the amount of sugar, salt, fat that is just short of overwhelming. If you've ever had coffee creamer, you know exactly what I'm talking about, because coffee creamer is not cream. So that they even use that word, cream, should never enter into that label, but they do. And they actually manipulate in the labs. They have chemists who put together food flavorings and food colorants. We were looking at ice cream. Very interesting for those of us who have a sweet tooth. Ice cream, if you haven't paid attention, the big names that we grew up with, I won't mention them here, they now have a product called frozen dairy dessert. Frozen dairy dessert. And why do they have frozen dairy dessert when we're conditioned, when we see this brand name and when we see these pictures, to automatically assume that they are ice cream, which contains by law a certain amount of cream and a certain amount of milk? Well, profit comes in. It is cheaper to make frozen dairy dessert than it is to make real ice cream. Simple as that. Now, what they did was to very simply change the advertising. And if you don't pay attention, as most of us don't, then what you find is that in a little small corner, the lower left-hand corner of the carton, it will either say ice cream, if that's what it is, or it will say frozen dairy dessert. And the obvious difference between them, I don't know if you've noticed this, but when you have frozen dairy dessert, it doesn't melt. I was raised that in a hot day, when you're having ice cream, you have to eat it fast or it'll melt and run down your arm and get on your clothes. Not this stuff here. You leave this stuff out, you will have to scrape it off your counter. See if I'm wrong. Prove me wrong. Leave that stuff out, you will see it form into a glob, which if you let it sit overnight by experiment, you have to scrape it up. What is this doing to your insides? They don't care. Because big food sleeps with big pharma. You eat enough of that stuff, you're going to get diabetes. If you're not careful, you're going to look, is it high fructose corn syrup? Oh, they changed the name. So you don't often see high fructose corn syrup as much. You will see glucose fructose syrup. You may see maltodextrin. You will just say corn syrup solids. There's a variety of names for these things. But this is the secret arts. They have laboratories right now where they have mock restaurants and they try this stuff out to see whether or not you can detect the difference. And if you cannot, then it's a win for them and they go out. And Big Pharma is very happy for all this to happen, because when you start getting diabetes, when you start developing insulin resistance, and then you start developing inflammation, which begins to damage your blood vessels, which damaged blood vessels will give you blood clots, it'll give you heart attacks, it'll give you strokes, it'll give you pulmonary embolisms, it'll give you a variety of maladies from which Big Pharma will profit. Secret arts, the arts of subliminal seduction, the art of impressing your subconscious with words and pictures and sounds to manipulate your emotions so that you'll buy stuff that you don't need and which bears no resemblance to anything that Allah created. And from the mischief of the envious one, as he practices envy, they compete with each other to damage your health for profit. This was really clearly illustrated, I would say, in the 60s and the 70s. The dairy industry used to make butter, and it was so common. You'd have the milkman who would deliver milk, and you'd go to the store, and in the dairy section, there was just butter until margarine was invented. And they even colored it and put it in sticks, just like you used to get butter, and hydrogenated it so that it would be solid, just like a stick of butter, and flavored it just like butter would taste. even to where there is a product that challenges you to believe that it isn't butter. Competition for profit at the cost of human misery. Surat al-Falaq. So how then, oh, by the way, a good reference for you, you could get it at the library. You got to read this book. All the things that I just told you. Sugar, Salt, and Fat, How the Food Giants Hooked Us by Michael Moss. Great reference book. Great reference book. You must read it. This is how you will verify all the things that I've told you. This is how you'll also understand. There's another book. The name of it escapes me at this moment, but Allah will grant that I remember it. There is a scathing indictment against statins. And statins is what we call a blockbuster drug. Once it was accepted as general information that cholesterol causes heart attacks, cholesterol causes strokes, cholesterol bad, 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 fat bad, 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 it became dogma, medical dogma, to prescribe statins for people. Robert Lustig, thank you, Allah, Lustig, Robert Lustig, great resource on statins and sugars and cholesterol. Long story short, statins are very bad for your health. Does it have a use in some cases? Absolutely. Snake venom has a use in some cases. Poison has a use in some cases. What do you think this stuff that they inject to make you get rid of wrinkles? That's botulism toxin. Poison, kill you. But it's modified in such a way and given in such amounts that you get more good from it from those who feel that wrinkles should not appear on your face. You get more good than the harm. But my point is that you won't know any of this unless you educate yourself. I can't teach you anything. I can provide instruction. I can provide information. Good point here to insert the disclaimer. I am not your doctor. I'm not acting in any way as your physician or your medical provider. Discuss, question what I have told you with your provider. If you make any actions, take any actions based on what I've told you, you're responsible for the results. Knowledge is power, good people. G.I. Joe told us knowing is half the battle. You must educate yourself on these things. Read labels. And for those who wish to, here's your vaccination against the victim mentality. You are not powerless. You can, we can, refuse to participate. The market responds to public demand. Things go off the market when people refuse to buy them. As bad as people say capitalism is, one of the good things about it is the demand controls the marketplace. If a thing becomes too expensive and people stop buying it, then that price will come down. If a product is found to be harmful, then people believe that, people will stop buying it and it goes away, right? Just like there are now toothpastes that you can buy that do not have fluoride in them. Well, that was a big one early on. How about tobacco? For the longest time, tobacco was recommended by doctors. It was all in the movies. And doctors used to recommend, you'd see them in commercials. Go on the internet. You will see doctors in the commercial for cigarettes. Because that was the advertising. Right? That was the advertising. You've come a long way, baby. With a cigarette in your mouth. What does that have? What's smoking a cigarette got to do with changing your thinking or commanding your human rights? Human rights. Didn't say women's rights, said human rights. All of those things. You can refuse to participate. This tobacco industry suffered a huge setback when it was finally established that smoking is a risk factor for cancer. So now you will have what they call black box labels. If you chew tobacco or dip snuff, you will say this product is known to cause cancer in people who use it. Same thing with cigarettes. I'm paraphrasing the language. But what's amazing is that people still do it. People still smoke. They should now, you'll see billboards that say consume alcohol responsibly. But how many artists now in popular culture, in music culture, glorify getting wasted? There are whole songs that you'll hear that speak about how somehow or another I got drunk and then I got engaged in activities that I should not have. Yeah, that becomes popular culture. And then you get they marry that to a beat or they marry that to a riff or a melody, and it gets lodged in your head, and 20 and 30 years, 40 years, 50 years later, you still remember it. But you can refuse to participate. You cannot change the industry directly, but they will listen to the prophets. They will listen to the prophets. And how do you do that? Enlighten your family. Excuse me. Enlighten your family and talk to everyone who will listen to you. Brother William, I salute you. I salute you. And any of you who put together a group and you want me to talk, give them a talk, I'll be happy to do that. I'm not as good at organizing and marketing as I am at instructing. But this is the way you push back so that when you seek your refuge, before you ask, it is already given. Understand, when you recite, this is one of my favorite surahs, when you recite Surah Al-Falaq, understand that it's more than just seeking refuge from people who are witches or people who want to use the supernatural against you. But if we look at that word supernatural, yeah, in some ways, it's not spooky. It's right there in your face. So that is my presentation. Read the Quran as if it actually was a book of current day guidance. It is extremely relevant. It is extremely practical. We follow the guidance and we don't go dawleen. We don't go the way of those people whose intelligence has led them astray. With that, I yield the talking stick. Instructor, Brother Williams.
Okay. Stand by. Stand by. Okay. That was an excellent presentation.
Did I get it right? Did I get it right?
From beginning to end.
Thank you.
Yeah. So you're getting some applause out there. There are many more people in the audience, just so you know. We just, for some reason, can't see them on camera. But that was absolutely excellent. And I'm going to do my best to try to continue that line of excellence in my presentation. So thank you very much, Karima Medina Bilal. All right.
Mrs. Bilal says you're welcome.
Well, tell Mrs. Bilal that I misses her. Okay, let's get this linguistic party continued. It's already gotten started. And for those of you who might not know me, I am your international instructor, Benjamin Bilal, and we're going to be continuing with a subject today that is kind of unusual, I guess you would say, but it's entitled Al-Baqarah, subtitled How Now, Brown Cow. So I'm going to have a little bit of fun with you today. So stand by and let me just make my readjustment. You're not going to be seeing my notes on your screen. Every now and then, I want to do that to know for sure that you're paying the kind of attention that needs to be paid to all of these subjects, actually, but particularly the ones that I'm bringing forth dealing directly with the Nunetics method and dealing also with the interpretation, if you will, of Quranic words and phrases. Very important that we learn that science of how to accurately interpret what Allah is saying on His pages. So again, thank you very much. And I just need to make one miniature adjustment and I will be ready for you. So just give me one moment and I will return. Okay, I've returned. And we're coming to you today on the 14th day of June, 2026. Once again, I am your international instructor, Benjamin Bilal, and we'll be dropping some jewels on you today based on ideas that Allah has sophisticatedly planted into the book called the Quran, Al-Quran, if you will. And going into this subject, I just want to make you aware that when you read these titles to surahs, such as Al-Baqarah, which they translate as the cow, and there are many other surahs that they have similar kinds of translations of. And what do I mean by similar? Meaning it's just mentioning simple things, iron, that kind of thing, the dawn, uh, titles that you might sit down and write a poem about. However, you need to know that these titles are in no ways close to identifying the gravity of the subject matter that Allah, the source creator, is dealing with within the Quran. So you might be seeing something called the cow or the heifer, but in no way is that the actual subject matter of the Quran itself. The Quran was not revealed in order to tell us about things that our eyes and our other senses could have easily told us without having to read the Quran. Whenever you're reading the Quran, understand that it is extra, above, and beyond wisdom. And by above and beyond, I mean above and beyond what you would have been able to source out for yourself if you were just doing the study on your own. You would never, ever come close to the gravity, the weight, the importance of the wisdom that is being taught to you through the Quran. So understand that. So don't just go looking for cows and heifers and people's family groups, the family of Imran. Don't just go looking for, cousins and uncles and aunties and that kind of thing when it talks about the family of Imran. It's talking about a family that is much bigger and much more consequential than that, using this particular family as the prototype, using the heifer as the prototype, using Maryam as the prototype, not as the person per se. This is not to say that the person did not exist in history. More than likely, they most certainly, I would even say, they most certainly did exist. Jesus and Muhammad and Musa and all of these great characters that are given to us in the Quran. Yes, indeed. But the value of their contribution to humanity's growth and development and evolution, the value of that is in how they are connected to the fitrah of how Allah evolves creation and involves creation. So they're being used as reference points to point to a bigger schematic that we call the cosmos itself and all of these various life forms that exist in us and around us. And it's speaking mostly to things that are taking place inside of us on the invisible level, what some scientists would call the metaphysical level. That's the level that the Quran is dealing with on the most part. Not that it's a book of, Shriners and Masons and that kind of information. No, it's a book that actually blows apart those people who invest their time and their resources in secret knowledge. The Quran's knowledge is not secret knowledge. The only secret to the Quran's knowledge is the fact that you don't know it. You're keeping this information from yourself. It's not being kept from you as a secret. It is available to the general public for you to purchase or for you to investigate in the library or wherever you want to go find this information related to the Quran. You shouldn't criticize the thing unless you read through it for yourself. And there are a lot of people out here who are accidentally, and I say accidentally on purpose, criticizing and critiquing the Quran, and most of them haven't even read the Quran. And you can tell by the things they say about the Quran. Then there are others who have read the Quran, but they've been reading misleading translations of the Quran. And they've been reading truncated versions of the Quran, meaning not the whole sentence is there. So it leads you to a different conclusion in terms of what's being said. So we need to really investigate the kind of study that will help us to come into a more comprehensive and conclusive, we might use the word holistic here, set of insights. Our insights need to be conclusive, compact, integrated, related, and understandable. So as I say that, let's begin officially with Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. And that is with Allah's signature, the merciful benefactor, the merciful redeemer. Al-Baqarah, how now, brown cow. I just put that in there, not because it means anything deep. It's just that this particular term has been in the English vernacular for about however long it is, since 1929, I think it was introduced. You've heard it in nursery rhymes and maybe in some other places, but definitely this phrase comes out of the academic circles between Europe and America, beginning in Europe. It came into the academic circles because it was a tool that was being used to help children, young children, pronounce their rounded vowel sounds. That's really what it started out as. How, now, brown, cow. It was used for that purpose so that they could hear the similarities in different words that use that particular vowel that led to the sound of owl. Okay. But the color brown is seen as an intense color. And when this color is applied to knowledge, brown indicates intensified study. Make a note of that. Brown is different from other colors because it indicates intensified study, not just regular, normal study that we would do when we're coming home to do our homework from high school or from grade school. Not that kind of study. Intense is the kind of study that produces the sciences. It's the kind of study that produces what we know about the universe up to this point. People who study on that level of the Einsteins and the Teslas and those other people whose names you might not have ever heard before. These are people who investigate knowledge on the level of what is called a brown study. The cow likes to chew, and chewing is a metaphorical term for a mental process taking place in the intellect that takes in information and it likes to chew on that. In fact, we even have that in our vernacular. Somebody asks us a question, we say, well, I can't answer you right now. Just give me a minute to chew on that. That means they want to turn it around in the intellect. They want to think about it. They want to not just accept it on face value. They want to look at that again and ask themselves the question again and see if they can get some more nutrition out of what you're asking of them. So that's a process that's involved in what we're calling Brown study. And they get it from the idea of the cow. And it's because the cow likes to chew. You know, it used to be said that a cow has 4 stomachs, but the reality is that it has it has 1 stomach, but it's divided into 4 sections. So let's not make that mistake again when describing the cow and its body parts. It has 1 stomach that is divided into 2 sections that do different things with the different kinds of food nutrition. So all of the plant doesn't go into the general area of the general stomach, but it goes into a compartment that deals specifically with plants or plant stuff. All right. So the cow likes to chew the food and then regurgitate the food in order to chew it again. See, that's the process I'm talking about. That's in the human intellect. That's what the human intellect likes to do. It likes to chew, chew, chew. And then that initial chewing is not enough. It regurgitates that food and then it chews on it again and turns it into smaller portions or smaller segments of food. Brown in nature, put your fedora caps on now. Brown in nature is also the color of wood. And wood produces papyrus, which allows us to collect and preserve information. Everyone here has heard of paper, if you haven't heard of the word papyrus, but the word paper comes from the word papyrus. And that's related to a particular plant from a particular set of trees. There are some trees that have been around for thousands of years. In the days of our Prophet Muhammad, the reason why writing was not a popular thing where they could preserve the information that was coming as revelation is because they didn't have access to papyrus. Later on in the history, when they gained access to papyrus, that's when a lot of the writing became popular. Those areas of the world that did have access, that's where you find the majority of people collecting, collating, and preserving information. That was the case for even ancient Iran. And they preserved a lot of their knowledge. In fact, that's where the first so-called hadiths were popularized because of their sophisticated use of the papyrus. And also, the papyrus was also being imported from China, who had plenty of it. Plenty of it. So the word wood gave us the word word in the English vocabulary. They just added an R to the word wood and gave us the word word. I hope I said that intelligently enough for you to understand. But again, the word wood gave us the word word. Now, the word Baqarah, which I'm spelling Baqarah, literally refers to a heifer. It has also been associated with the full-blown cow, and it is also a reference to just cattle in general. Now, Again, do we really think that the creator of the skies, the earth, and all between would use his inspired revelation to simply discuss such a mundane topic as a cow? Is that all he was trying to relate it to? A mundane creature called a cow? I think you can answer that question for yourself. The real purpose of scripture is to show you the script. And script is a form of writing, as we all know, that specializes in making connections between each and every letter. That's what script does. It literally connects letters. Print does not connect letters. Script is the form of writing that is more sophisticated than print, but it's the form of writing that you can only learn after you've learned print. So as you know, in grade school, we teach our children print. I'm talking now about the people who are using the English language system. We teach our children how to print, and printing involves the complete separation of one letter from the next. Your mind, just like the Baqarah, has sections and is dealing with a section at a time. You have to learn how letters sound, how words are pronounced. So this is a gradual incremental process that the mind is going through in its ability to learn how to utilize language and communication. You don't just throw it all at the child and say, learn this or suffer, learn this or get left back. No, we go through incremental processes in teaching children how to read, how to write. All right. So they have to learn the alphabet before they can learn a word. And they have to learn a word before they can learn a sentence. So the mind is doing the same exact thing that the Baqarah does when she eats. It is compartmentalizing food or stimuli, if we're talking about the mind. So that script is being shown to you, given to you, fed to you, if you will, because it's food also. And it's making connections. So if what you're learning in what you call religion is not serving to help you make connections in the logic of life, then I would say that you're reading from the wrong information, because all information that claims to come from the source creator should be making some serious connections in your mind, in your intellect. It shouldn't be making the kind of connections that separate you from nature by giving you a whole lot of unnatural phenomenon like babies born without fathers and some other things that religion has been very good at telling us. It should be making connections so that nature becomes completed, so that nature becomes holistic, if you will. See, so that the world that you're looking at in the skies, when you look at the skies, and in the earth, when you investigate the earth, that world begins to become sophisticatedly connected and completed. Allah says that this is the purpose of the deen itself, called Al-Islam, that he has completed and perfected for you your deen. So if he completed and perfected the deen, why are we seeing the world that the deen is supposed to represent and tell us about as being this separated, unorganized, chaotic thing? So making connections between each letter. And a letter is that which lets. They don't teach it to you like that, but that's the fact. A letter is that which lets, in the same way that a go-getter is one who goes and gets. In the same way that a better is one who bets. The ER suffix is meant to move a thing or give a thing an action. And it's no different in the word letter. Let's go a little bit deeper. Let's talk about the meaning for each one of these Arabic letters, each one of these Arabic consonants. And that would be the B, the Q, and the R. The letter B is called Ba by some, but it's called Bait by those who know its origin. Bait. And what does bait mean? It is the process of emptying and filling a thing repetitively. So if I use my drinking glass to pour me a beverage that throughout the day I continuously replenish, when I'm finished with it, I go to get some more water or whatever it is. It could be much more than that. Karima said, just make sure it ain't sweet. Yeah. So, we go to get these beverages and we drink them and we come back for more. You know how our children do. Mommy, can I have some more milk? Whatever they're looking for. So the filling and emptying of that vessel is bait, the action of bait. Now you might say, but bait means house. Yeah. But it came to mean house because house is empty and fill repetitively. The family moves in. There are other members that are born into that family. And eventually people leave, they move, they marry, they die, right? So what's going on with this bait situation is that people are emptying and filling the space that we call the house or the bait. The next letter, the Qaf or the Q, represents the heart. The heart as measured rhythm. It also represents the subconscious mind as a measurement of memory. Now, keep in mind that on the most part, it's the subconscious mind that is keeping your heart beating. It's not your conscious mind. Your conscious mind can do it. It can contribute to the rate of speed that your heart ends up pumping blood. If you're thinking about something crazy or chaotic or terrible or scary or something, yes, the heart can speed itself up. Someone out there has their phone open. I believe it's you, Muhammad. You did? Okay, I think you closed it. Okay, so we shouldn't have that issue. Thank you. Right?
Pardon me, I
So,
have a question, instructor.
yes, please.
Yeah, could you explain the parallel between BAYT, bait, and BAIT, if
Yes,
there's a
sir.
connection,
Yeah,
please?
there's no difference. It's exactly the same thing, exactly the same
Okay.
pronunciation.
Okay.
Yeah, I stayed away from the BAIT because people will start thinking about fish.
Yes, exactly. Surely. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, yeah, we do that on occasion. All right. Thanks for that question. I'm sure other people may have been thinking that or asking that, wanting to
You're
ask that.
welcome.
Thank you.
You're
Okay.
welcome. Thank
Yes, sir. Those are the kinds of questions I like, directly related to the subject. That's beautiful. Okay. So this letter Qaf is the heart as measured rhythm. The heart has a particular rhythm that the doctor is going to be looking and listening for when you go to visit him or her. If it's sporadic, they're going to say, no, that's not good. He's got some kind of arrhythmia going on there. And the rhythm is not consistent. He may have an issue. So let's check his heart further to see if there are any real complications. Okay. You want it to be boom, 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 consistent. Now, the reason I'm going through all of this information is so that you'll know that these letters are not just sounds in the mouth. They represent concepts that are used by Allah because He's the one who's using this particular language, the Arabiya or the Arabic. But He's connecting every letter to things that He created, manifested, and promoted in His creation. So the house that a man builds is not the only bait. It's not even the first bait. Because when humans got here, there weren't these ready-made villages of homes, complexes, projects, streets filled with people who are living indoors, away from the concerns of the weather and all of these other things. Yeah, that's right. The word ruminate is what cows do. It means they're chewing on something perpetually, or at least over and over again for a time. Absolutely true. All right. And we use that phrase in academics for people who think a lot, people who like to turn over information in the mind for better understanding. Yes, absolutely true. So that's called, it has to do with memory. And you memorize a thing by repeating it to yourself over and over again. That's why they introduced the basic ABCs when we were in grade school or in kindergarten. And we had to repeat it over and over. They never told us the letters had meanings. They just said, remember this sound. A, B, C, D, E, F, G. You know the song. I'm not going to sing it for you. All right. So it's dealing directly with memory that establishes itself in the subconscious portion of the mind to begin with. We then take it out of the subconscious portion of the mind and we feed it into the conscious mind. And when we do that, it becomes off, subconscious, raw, conscious. This is raw. This is off, the back of the head, where the subconscious resides, etc., etc. So that back and forth movement from Qaf to Ra is how we memorize and repeat information. Ra represents things which move forward quickly. If someone comes into the room and they say, I don't remember our mother's home telephone number. Could you give that to me again? I wasn't thinking about her, the mother's phone number, but it quickly comes forth from the subconscious where it's stored into the conscious mind. When I'm finished repeating her number, I just put it back into the vault. So it's always a process in the mind going back and forth. Subconscious, conscious, subconscious, conscious. It's beautiful when you understand it. And it moves there quickly. Where does Instructor Bilal live? I know I'm in his city. I might want to go visit him. Where does he live? You don't take a whole lot of time to figure that out if you already know where I live. It's a quick process of delivering information from the back to the front. And Ra represents things that repeat themselves also. So it's doing this thing, these processes is doing this perpetually over and over again. And you know that simply from listening to the sound of the R as it's being pronounced in your mouth. The rotary sound. It's not the sound of the lamb, where it's just la, la. It's stuck there. The tongue is stuck at the top palate. But with the Ra, the tongue still goes to the top palate, but it rolls. It ripples. It runs. You know, when you run, you can't run by having both feet on the ground. You have to keep exchanging legs in order to run. And you have to do that repeatedly. Yes. Someone trying to ask a question on the Samsung? If not, I'd ask you to just silence your phone and we'll continue. So a Baqarah is not a full-blown cow. Keep that in mind. A Baqarah must be at least 2 years old and cannot have given birth to a calf. C-A-L-F. 2 years old and could not have yet given birth to a calf. First of all, if you didn't get the hint from the name itself, Baqarah is always female. There's no such thing as a male cow unless you're talking directly about a bull. That's a male cow, if you want to consider it that way. But the bull is the male aspect of the species that includes the cow as the feminine part of that species. All right. That's why we're talking about the cow being able to give birth. And you know, it's the females in nature that give birth. The Baqarah is literally the middle stage of a cow's development because you have calf, then you have in the middle Baqarah, then you have cow. So when you get a chance, just keep repeating that to yourself. Calf, that's below 2 years old. As soon as it becomes 2 years old, on its birthday, is when it becomes a heifer, the middle age version of the cow, a heifer. And it doesn't become a full-blown cow until it actually gives birth itself to a calf. I want you to get that sequencing. Calf, immediately, no matter what else is happening in the environment, when it turns 2 years old on its second birthday, it is a heifer. But that heifer does not become a full-blown cow. It doesn't matter. It could be the next 7 years before it has a calf. It still is a heifer. It's just a very grown heifer. You know how our grandma used to call some of these girls that our daughters would bring home from school? What are you doing hanging out with that daggone heifer? And what many of them meant was that they were bringing home girls. They weren't necessarily old, but they, in their behavior, were attempting to act old, or at least older than they actually were. That's what our grandmothers and great grandmothers used to call a heifer. Don't bring that heifer around here, influencing you to do A, B, and C. Pull that skirt down when you go to school, girl. You in here looking like that heifer I saw in your classroom the other day. Pull that skirt down. I remember walking by the neighborhood Catholic school when I was teaching high school in New York City. And on their way into the Catholic school, on the way into the Catholic school, you saw the girls coming from a block or two away. And when they got on the block of the Catholic school, they started pulling their skirts down. But before they got to the school, they were wearing literally what we would call a mini skirt with their dresses. They had pulled their dresses up so far that they became mini dresses, mini skirts. So that's how they were manipulating their dress in that time, trying to look older, trying to look like the hot, jet set, sexy type women. And they were but 12 years old, sometimes 14 years old. Oh boy. Now, the Baqarah, I repeat, is literally the middle stage of a cow's development. Now, remember, I told you that this is also related to academics. What is going on in this surah called Al-Baqarah is also explaining to us in very deep and concise language the processes through which the human intellect goes through its academic development. And the world of scholarship that study these subjects, they know it. And this is why they call a particular level of academics a level where you can achieve a baccalaureate degree. from the same word, Baqarah. That's also a Hebrew word, Baqarah. Also, in the world of social phenomenon, before a male gets married, when he's in the process of marrying, they call him a bachelor. You've heard that word, of course. He's a bachelor, right? From the same root. He's unattached. Now, the farmer's preoccupation, we're going to go a little bit deeper now. The farmer's preoccupation is with counting his newborn stock. I just gave you several hints there. The farmer was thoroughly preoccupied with counting his newborn stock, meaning the calves that will be born to these cows. We also know that the word stock is associated with wealth. We talk about the stock market. The farmer would often go to sleep and then wake up the next day to several newborn additional stock. Due to the darkness, he couldn't necessarily see them at night, but by the time the dawn came, they became visible. You know, on a dark night on a farm that's far away from street lights, you don't know what's going on at night in the barn. And so we weren't preoccupied with trying to see how many new cows or new heifers or new calves to be were being born. We weren't preoccupied with that. We would do that kind of counting once the sun came up, and we would go into the barn and count, or into the field and begin counting. So this is how the AM hours became known in Arabic as Baqarah. Instead of the Q, just replace the Q with a kaf or a K. And the word Baqarah, as a name, we say Baqira for certain daughters of ours. Baqira, from Baqarah, Bakarah. Now, the word Baqarah that we're discussing from the Quran with the Q also refers to the splitting, the ripping and dividing of a thing. This is what the rising light of the dawn does to the darkness. It splits the darkness. This is also what the rising light in the intellect does to ignorance. Catch that connection. The rising light of the physical skies, sun, creates a split between darkness and light. Sometimes you can almost see the clear line, the clear division between where the sun is doing what it does and where the light or the darkness is beginning to dissipate or continuing to dissipate. It separates fallacies and falsehoods from real knowledge. That's what the real separation is. It's supposed to separate the ignorance from the truly knowledgeable. And in academic circles, we have the ones who pretend to be truly knowledgeable, but they're really the ones who are practicing some of the most intense darkness available to human beings. We look at them and we can't take our eyes off of them. Read the story in the Quran, which we will do next week, ayat by ayat. And you'll see that there were people who, when they would visualize this heifer, they said this heifer was so astounding, it would just snatch the sight away. You couldn't take your eyes off of it. And I'll show you in detail what the words that are being used represent in that series of ayat. Very important for understanding our academic development. Yes. Thank you, Bashir. That's right. You got the right reference there. Okay. So we're talking about the separating of the fallacies and the falsehoods from the truth. At the end of a cow's lifespan, she also becomes ripped, split, and divided, but often on the butcher's table. Both the religious world and the academic world have also split their knowledge up. We call them subjects or sections, just like for the cow in the butcher's shop. What section would you like, ma'am? What part of the cow would you like for us to give you? Would you like the hooves or the stomach or the side, the flanks, the steak, the burger? What would you like, ma'am? So we see that animal as being one that can be divided into sections once it matures. You know, in a grade school, when you're in grade school, you're not really entertaining a whole lot of different sections of information. They're pretty much all integrated into each other. You're learning how to read in one, and then when you go into math, you still have to learn how to read. They're just giving you a different spin on what you're learning. But you're not really learning philosophy and psychology and higher mathematics. They're giving you basic stuff where they're really reinforcing the English that you've learned in the first grade or second grade. They're just reinforcing the basics or the fundamentals. But as you grow older, they begin to further separate those sections of knowledge. And you have to be the one to make the connections. The letters Qaf and Ra, Q and R, is a reference to reading and also to collecting. The Qaf and the Ra, when you see them together, they are a reference to reading in some cases, as in the word Iqra, Qaf, Ra, Hamza, or Ain, whichever you choose to use, but we know the Qaf and the Ra are in the word Iqra, and they tell us that it means to read. And it only means to read because you're bringing information from the back to the front, from the Qaf to the Ra, from the subconscious storehouse into the conscious display. I hope I'm going slow enough for you to get this. So when we read, we are collecting letters. So the original reference for Iqra is to collect or to gather. We are gathering letters when we're learning to read. We're collecting letters. And that's how we involve ourselves in the process of learning how to read. And we gather these letters in order to form words which we put together in a way which allows us to read. The word read, R-E-A-D, esoterically refers to the re-adding of something. The R-E-A-D, or what is actually ADD, add. You're recalculating. You are re-adding something. And again, that's what the farmer does when he goes out in the morning to count how many extra animals have been born overnight. He or she are now busy re-adding their stock. If you're out there investing in the stock market, You come up the next day or the next day of the week, Friday or whenever it is that you go to check on your stock, and you are re-adding if you gained something in the stock market or through the stock market. All of this information is related, is the point. This color brown, let's go back to that for a moment. It's not given in the Quran as the color of the Baqarah. We've heard that term only in these elementary school type of presentations of poetry and prose. How now, brown cow. The cow is not generally seen in religious circles as being a brown cow, not even when introduced by the Hebrew language and its Torah. In the Quran, the color of the heifer is actually yellow, or what we might even call golden. In the Bible, it is colored red. So you'll hear about the red heifer. They never call her a cow because they know better. You'll hear about the red heifer in the Bible. But in the Quran, it's given as the yellow heifer. And some people say, you see, their God made a mistake. he said, he said yellow, and our scripture says red. And there's more to say about that I will say this time in the next session. I'm not going to go into all of the color symbolism. That pretty palette will be spread out for you, and I'll paint you a gorgeous picture using that level of symbolism. But just suffice it to say that yellow represents sunlight. And sunlight is symbolic of social intelligence. Why social intelligence? Because the sun is a symbol of social contribution. When the sun comes up, you're able to see the society. You're able to see the social nature of all things around you. In the dark, you can't see halfway down the block if there's no light pole or something assisting you. When it's dark, you're only seeing those things that are right around you, and that's a maybe. It can be so dark that you can hardly see your hand in front of your face. But when the sun comes up, we're able to now identify faces, identify places, identify structures, businesses, opportunities, dangers. We're able to identify those things that are lurking in society or helping us to advance ourselves and our own causes in society, because the sun is giving us the ability to visualize. So that's yellow. And Allah gives this calf a yellowish tint. And they ask her, we'll talk about this on next Sunday. They said, what color is she? So they were trying to identify her. They were trying to see if the heifer that Musa was talking about was the secret society heifer that they had been dealing with when they were dealing with this brown, or pardon me, when they were dealing with this red heifer. Red is symbolic of a lot of things, but the first thing that comes to people's mind is blood when we're talking about something red. A lot of vampires wear red. Red and black. Study your recording artists and your movie stars. A lot of them, when they come out into the public to receive their rewards, yeah, red and black. Now, the ancient Egyptians actually had a cow as a depiction of the sky god. That's what they called it. Google it just like that. The ancient Egyptian sky god. Because the cow, again, was a symbol of the light that was protruding from the sky. And when a person is extremely educated, sometimes we call him a know-it-all. He thinks he's a know-it-all. But we call him well-read. Mr. So-and-so seems to be a very well-read individual. That means he's a bookworm. He just keeps his nose in the pages. But we know that read, R-E-D, is a synonym, I think they call it, of R-E-A-D. Those are the tricks that they put in language. Two different words spelled two different ways, but pronounced exactly the same. That happens throughout English. So, I mentioned the word baccalaureate, which is an academic term, but we can also connect the term Baqarah to the English word vigor, V-I-G-O-R. And vigor means your strength potential, your energy level. How much vigor do you have? Related also to Baqarah. The word big is related to Baqarah. And the word virgin is related to Baqarah. These are speaking to states of the human intellect, is the point I'm attempting to make. Al-Baqarah is a warning against arrogance ruling in your belief system. This is for all people, not just the Jews, not just the Christians, not just the Muslims, not just the Hindus. This is a warning that when you adopt a belief system that presents a structure that includes an opportunity for extreme arrogance because you think you know it all, that's Baqarah. That system is al-Baqarah, not the person or the people necessarily, but the system that they're choosing to establish is Baqarah. It's a heifer. It thinks it knows, but knows not. Arrogance will not allow the intellect to graduate from the ego. The ego, by the way, is the yellow chakra level. The yellow, the ego. It won't allow the intellect to graduate from that level to the next level, which is the heart level, the green level. Those of you who have studied the chakra system, you can follow that logic. If you haven't studied it, do some cursory study on your own, and then we'll talk more about it in another 7 days or so. In this regard, Baqarah can be considered to be schools of thought. Now, that phrase I know you've heard before, because Muslims love to use that, our school of thought. Muslims should know that this phrase has nothing to do with Din al-Islam. We think it came about when the Muslims were in their heyday. Maybe so, but the Muslims didn't get it from the Quran because the Baqarah represents a school of thought. Remember? Yeah, it represented a place of study, a place of reading, a place where some Iqra was taking place. It's the house of reading. That's what the Western world calls a school. In fact, there used to be little red schoolhouses all across America back in the day. Now, I don't think you're old enough to remember them yourself, unless you're maybe from the South or somewhere else where they still had those schools in operation. But there would be little schools where they would send you, maybe 10 other people, 20 students, or whoever can fit in the house. And they used to paint them red. And that wasn't by accident. So it's a warning against the arrogance. That's what the yellow is signifying. A warning against those who believe they were born to spread the light and that you had to come to them for the light. That's why they couldn't take their eyes off the Baqarah. This is the one with the light. So we're talking now about schools of thought. And Muslims actually adopted it from the schools of psychology that were established at the turn of the century, the 20th century, 1900s or so. Muslims adopted this from what had already been established as the schools of psychology. That by itself should tell you something. If Muslims were adopting an ideology, which is what it is and was, and they're adopting it from a perspective of psychology, then what was the true purpose and plan for these Muslim scholars who were establishing something for the deen that they did not find spoken on in the actual Quran, but they had to go adopt it from the Greeks, which is where they got it from. The ones they considered to be the superior academicians, the superior minds operating in the world. So I think what I'll do in this next section is just send it to you. There's a lot to read here, but it's on psychology's early schools. And those early schools included structuralism, founded by Wilhelm Wundt in Germany. When you find out how deeply entrenched Germany is in our academic system, United States academic system, it'll blow your mind. The word kindergarten is German. We keep going around talking about how the Jews influenced American education. That came later. The initiators of this system, German schools, German language, German ideology. That doesn't mean that they were influenced by Adolf Hitler. He wasn't the only German in the world. And it doesn't mean that it was a bad thing because it was German or came from a German mind. That's not what we're saying. I'm just asking you to pay attention to the trail that's being left. So structuralism was the first formal school of psychology. And there's more to say about that, and I'll leave it in my notes and send it to you. It was also in psychology an area called functionalism that was developed by William James, if you care to investigate that. And that school of psychology was influenced by Darwin's theory of natural selection. There, of course, is psychoanalysis introduced by Sigmund Freud, where he dealt a lot with the unconscious mind, early childhood experiences, and mental conflicts. There was behaviorism that was championed by John B. Watson and then later by B.F. Skinner. That's when they reduced human life down to how you behave. Not how you think, not your thoughts, not your underlying proclivities for doing things, but how does he behave on the surface? Is he a thief? Are other people who look like him also thieves? Do they steal? Okay, so we're going to judge him by the fact that he's a natural born thief. And that's how they have segmented the whole human population about what they might do, what they might not do, because of how they act on the surface. They're doing it right now in the news. They take a segment and they look for a segment that's doing bad things, and they put a magnifying glass on it to the point where you begin to think that every child, every teenager who looks like this guy on the news is a ruffian. There are no good people on earth anymore. I'm looking at people who look like me outside my window. I don't see that kind of behavior taking place. I go into the supermarkets into the other stores and businesses. And I don't think I've seen it yet since I've been down here, down south, for the last 6, 7 years or whatever we've been there. I've never seen any of our people acting like that. But again, they like to take this sample that has been created by social media and they like to explode that image into the public. William is working with young people like this. That's not his experience. You see him every now and then after the football game or the basketball game or what, but they present it in a way to make you think that that's the majority of us. I remember Imam Muhammad saying once, if the majority of us acted like the way they depict us in the media, we would have no social life. You wouldn't be able to walk down your block. You might say, well, in some places we can't. Well, that's in those places. Those are the places where they put the giant magnifying glass over the people. But not to say that that's the majority of us is my point. They need a laughing stock of the world right now. They need a boogeyman. Whenever they take the magnifying glass off of one people because it's no longer working in their interest, in the interest of the big time money makers, then they have to find another boogeyman to shine that flashlight on so that they can see every little thing, your pimples and little pieces of cloth or whatever you might have that you can't catch with the regular eye. But when you put that magnifying glass on it, man, that looks scary. That's what they're doing with the people right now. And what they're doing is depicting certain people in a way where, although that's not the general behavior, when they first start showing it to you, it becomes a predominant behavior because people see it on the news. And then for some reason, they want to be like Mike. They want to be tough like this one, that one, and the third one. They want a girl that looks like her. And sometimes it's not even a girl. That's a story for another day. But this is what they're looking for. They're shaping us in their image and likeness, as the Bible puts it. So there are other areas of psychology that are being spoken of here. The bottom line is that in philosophy, which is the sister to psychology, schools of thought have existed for millennia, hundreds of years in philosophy. Western philosophy began in ancient Greece with thinkers like Socrates, Plato, and Aristotle, laying the groundwork for systematic inquiry into reality, ethics, and knowledge. So again, in a nutshell, I'm telling you all of this so that you'll understand that when the Quran is speaking on Baqarah, it's not speaking on some Rudy Poo subject. It's not speaking on some mythical cow in the middle of somebody's farm who needs her neck slit. So what kind of creator would that be? To just tell you, go slit the neck of that cow. What fun is he getting from that? What thrill is the God that they believe in getting from the instruction to Moses to go slay a cow or a heifer? We have to think bigger than that. If we don't begin thinking bigger than the trap that they've set for us in terms of the holdback that they're putting on our mental ability. We're at a period in history where if we would just exercise the, what's the word for it? Another word for stretching, expansion. That's what I'm looking for. If we're not ready to discuss and engage in the expansion of the human intellect, we're going to be left so far behind that it probably wouldn't make a difference whether we were just outright slaughtered or not. Because then we'll be adding to the pile of people who are literally choosing to waste their lives on foolishness. And that's what the manipulators want. They want an image that when you come outside your house, that's what you see. So we don't have to share our businesses with you. We don't have to share our wealth with you. We don't have to have our children playing with your children. Your children are dangerous. So that's not the common depiction right now at this point. But if we just allow it to keep growing, festering, and infecting other areas of society, that's what we're going to have. And it's not for the greater society of so-called white people or police people or whoever to put that in check among us. It's up to people who look like you and me, on the most part, to put a check on it by at least speaking on it. Isn't that what one of the hadiths tell us? Use your hand against it. And it doesn't mean go and punch somebody in the jaw, but it means do something physical to stop it. And if you can't do that, speak out about it. And if you can't do that, because when you speak, you have nothing but enemy forces and influences around you, then at least dislike it in your heart. But that's the weakest of Iman, so says the hadith. All right, drawing us to a conclusion. Schools of thought. Now, the word Baqarah, in my conclusion, is related to the word Vatican. This is not to start trouble with our Catholic population. Let me say that from the outset. But the word Baqarah is related to the word Vactus, Vaccus, a Latin word that is related to the word Vatican, another Latin word, and also related to a word that you probably have not heard called vaticinate. I didn't say vaccinate. I said vaticinate. Vaticinate means to prophesy, to foretell, to predict. But that word vaticinate, as you can clearly hear, is also related to the word vaccinate, which is also related to the word vacus and bacchus and several other words. When you understand the interplay of those consonants, boy, oh boy, will you have fun with words when you do that. So this word heifer is consonantally connected to the word Baqarah. The H in heifer interchanges with the qaf as a guttural sound. La, fa, ra, ka. The F in heifer interchanges with the labial B in Baqarah. And the R in heifer interchanges with the R in Baqarah. So they're not always in the same exact order. They don't have to be. They're carrying the influences of what that letter represents. That's the important thing. So heifer and Baqarah are saying the same thing. And Baqarah is a system. It's not a heifer cow. It's a system that mostly shows up in the areas of academics. That's why they have grade school, middle school, high school. And middle school is where you have most of the problems. That's where they start to label you ADD, ADCD, ABCD, EFG. They give you all these labels right around middle school. When you start talking with an independent mind and they don't like what you're saying sometimes, they'll start to label you. You might be a genius, but that's not what they're looking to label. They're looking to label anything that interferes with the system that they put in place. And that's not every teacher, that's not every time, that's not every principal of a school. I'm not talking generally like that. I'm talking about specific moves that have been made in the world of academia to set other people back. The sacrificing of the heifer is the ridding yourself of the academically influenced word of Allah. This is the biggest point being made this afternoon. When academics becomes riddled with information, translations, interpretations that have nothing to do with what Allah revealed and have everything to do with what they are attempting to establish academically for your intellect to follow and chew on, like the heifer and the cow chew on food. When that's done, then the academics replace scripture. The academics replace the word of Allah, the signs of Allah, the sciences that Allah has established. So in the next Strong 7, we're going to discuss the actual ayat, as mentioned earlier, that are related to the Baqarah in order to gain further insight. So with that said, I conclude my remarks for today on Al-Baqarah. How now, brown cow?